I'm Kristen.
And I'm Maddie.
We're sisters and heavy readers.
Join us every single week to talk stories, interview authors, and collab with fellow book nerds.
Welcome to the Kristen Mad Show.
Let's get down to business.
Welcome back to the show, guys. I am so excited about today's guest. This is a pinch me moment. She is a top reviewer on Goodreads. She is ranked number 20 out of 150 million Goodreads users. I have to say, I'm probably her number one fan. Also, this is my sister, Maddie.
Thank you so much for having me. What an intro.
Thank you for coming on the show. I'm so nervous. Okay, guys, this is for real. She hit the ceiling on the amount of friends that you can have on Goodreads, which is only 5,000.
Yeah, we need to fix this Goodreads. What the fuck?
I wonder if Goodreads turned off their feedback comments.
Oh,
they don't want feedback. Sure. They know that they could do better, and they said, you know what, we're going to rest on our laurels here.
Yeah, they are just we refuse to improve. We are 15 years archaically in the past, and sucks for you guys.
And we're all still going to use it like idiots. But anyways, we do love Goodreads. You can still follow Maddie. So if you want to start watching her reviews, seeing what she's rating things, watch what she adds to her TBR, you can do that. She just won't be able to add you as a friend. Sorry, she has 5,000 friends too many.
Sad. I'm so sad about this.
What a flex, Maddie. I'm just going to say it one more time. She is number 20 out of 150 million users for her reviews. Number 20. The hell? I feel like we're back in high school when you were fighting for valedictorian. Do you remember? I mean, she did let this go at one point, but she was really gunning for it. And I was like, why are you so amazing? The hell? Okay, so
you are my biggest fan. You're making me blush.
I am. I'm her biggest fan. Today, I'm going to pick Maddie's brain because I think that more of you guys are like me and you might have some hangups about reviews and rating things. These are my hangups. If I, as somebody who is watched for my book ratings, if I rate something low that you loved, you're not going to feel connected to me and you might not like me. If I rate something really well and then you take my rec because you trust me and then it's not what you thought, you're going to have beef with me. And I don't want beef and I want to be liked.
Kristen, this is giving recovering people pleaser.
I'm still in recovery. Get me in a group.
I feel like you have to, finish your thought. Do you have more hangups?
Well, my question for you is, why do you not have hangups? You look very critically and I think get some amount of pleasure out of the way you review and analyze what you're reading. So why do you not have hangups and what motivates you to take the time? Because it does take time and energy to do this for the people.
Well, I am thrilled that the people like it. I mean, I'm not immune to wanting to be liked and wanting to be helpful, of course. But I think when I first started writing reviews, because I think I've written 250 at this point or something. I think when I first started, it was really just because I value reading critically and I value retaining what I've read and I want it to sink into my bones and I want to really understand why a book sits one way versus another. And because I do think about books like art, I just like to sit with them for a second after I finish them to think about them as a full finished piece of art and think about what the author's intention was and whether or not as the audience that transferred, whether it actually landed. There's times when a book's intention is just to entertain you. And I think there's other times when a story is trying to explore the medium or it's trying to tell you something about the human condition or it's trying to offer up a cautionary speculation or it's playing with language itself. It's literally trying to explore how far we can go with communication and linguistics. And so there's so many things a book can be trying to do. And as the consumer, I just want to kind of fully absorb that. And one of the ways I do that is by reviewing, is by thinking critically about it from lots of different angles and then trying to articulate my thoughts about it in somewhat of a brief way. I try to keep it to 3 to 5 paragraphs or something. And then hopefully it helps someone who has read the book feel like they're in a dialogue about it and that they can interact about the thing they've just consumed and hopefully liked. Or if they didn't like it, but they're having a difficult time explaining why, or if they are trying to decide whether to read it or not, hopefully the way I'm talking about it either resonates with them or doesn't, and that helps them decide whether or not to take their time to do it. It's like a huge value of mine to use my time wisely and also save other people from wasting their time. And reviews are just like an avenue for me to do that.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. I've never thought about if I write a review, it's also a place for somebody who has also read the book to feel a sense of connection and community with somebody else. Because if they don't know anybody who has read that book, but they want to be in some sort of a dialogue, that is so great.
Yeah.
I have always approached my reviews and my ratings as a way to help other people decide if they should pick up the book.
Okay.
Which also makes it hard, right? Because if I don't rate something highly, I hate the thought that I'm actually keeping someone from something that they might like.
Sure.
But I like that you're saying, okay, like you're giving 5 paragraphs to it. So you will have, I know Maddie's personality, you'll have an opportunity to talk positively about the book. You will celebrate what it did well always. But if something is not what you consider the best version of its art and that there are better options out there, you will have no issue.
I don't.
Saying specifically why,
Yeah.
not just like it wasn't the best. Like you will go into why. What does that mean?
Sure. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about my kind of rubric for critiquing things in a little bit, but there's room in that rubric to talk about what works and what doesn't. And sometimes what's most profound to me when I sit down and write a review is that there will be books that I didn't necessarily have a great time with, or that it was difficult for me to pick up, or I was slightly bored or whatever. So like there's a part of my rubric that is personal enjoyment of a book. And that might be lower for some books. But when I sit down to review it critically, there are other aspects of the book sometimes that just blow my mind in retrospect when I really give them space to think about it. So like I'm thinking about a specific book right now, like The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt.
Okay.
I ended up rating this, I think, between a 4 and a 5 star overall. I felt like it was very strong in retrospect. But while I was reading it, some of the chapters are extremely long. Some of the content is really heavy. I was not always having a great time with it, and I was not always motivated to pick it up. And then I finished the book, and I was thinking about the characters, the setting, the plot, the themes, the emotional impact that it had on me. Those are the other parts of my rubric. And I was like, oh, this is so strong in so many areas. I'm so glad I read this. This has given me so much to think about, and it's given me such an insight, and it's going to stick with me. Like it has lasting power.
Yeah.
And that impacts the rating. So I can talk about all of that in a review so that, again, if we're talking about someone who hasn't picked up the book yet and whether they should read it, hopefully they're going to read that and go, oh, okay, I know what to expect going in. This is not a page turner. This is not uplifting, good time, happy, let's read this on the beach. This is something to sit with and contend with, and that's going to spark ideas. It's going to make me think critically about this or that. And then they know what they're getting into with the body of work. You know what I mean?
Oh, I feel like it's massively helpful. I love when we do our videos, yes, if, no, if, because it feels the most like your reviews. Like this is where it's strong. This is where like it might be a turnoff for you. To write an amazing review on Goodreads that is, say, 5 paragraphs long. And you talked a little bit about like your rubric. Obviously, I know that what you're talking about is your spreadsheet.
Yes.
But before Maddie's spreadsheet that we now have available on our Patreon because it's so freaking great, you use something different, right? What made you want to start using a spreadsheet, and why didn't you stick with that one? Why did you make one?
Okay, yes, I did use another creator's spreadsheet in 2024, and I found it so helpful just to get like my own record keeping down. There's just like Goodreads just isn't a great place to keep track of a lot of the information I like to keep track of on what I'm reading. Like I want to know the major publishers and imprints I'm using. I want to keep track of what I'm reading physically versus what I'm reading on audio. I want to know, just for my own sake, like the mix of authors that I'm reading. And so I track all of that in a spreadsheet. But the spreadsheet that I used in 2024 did not have anything around rating other than, what did you rate it out of 5? And maybe it had half-star possibilities. But I watched Brandon Sanderson's YouTube lectures last year on how to write a fantasy novel. And in his first lecture, he talks about character, setting, and plot, and how a really good story needs at least 2 of those things to be extremely strong. And there are stories where one of those things can be a little bit more, let's say, basic or just expected, but you really, really need to shine in 2 of those areas in a fantasy novel for it to stand out from the pack. And that stuck with me so much that's how I started writing reviews. Every time I sat down, because I primarily read fantasy, every time I sit down to write a review, I would analyze the setting, I would analyze the plot, and I would analyze the characters and decide what I thought each of them deserved out of 5 stars. And if 2 of them were really strong, that was obviously going to pull up my rating. Now, I kind of got more sophisticated with it this year when I did build my own spreadsheet, and I decided I did need more categories. But I think that holds true for me. I don't think it's just because Brandon Sanderson said it. I think I've noticed that to be true, that there are stories where one of those things is outstanding, but because the other 2 are just basic or mediocre or even bad, it can pull the whole rating down for me. And
which ones are more important to you, do you feel like, of those 3? Which would you prefer? What's the best pairing?
In a fantasy setting, I really prefer characters and setting to be phenomenal, and I will suffer plot. And I know that sounds crazy.
You're crazy.
I know that sounds crazy, but there are times, I think, where let's take something like Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings is a hero's journey. It is not anything special or original in terms of plot. It's a predictable plot. You know exactly what's going to happen, and there are no plot twists. There's nothing that deviates from that hero's journey of you have an unlikely main character who doesn't seem like they would be able to do the thing that needs to be done to save the world, but they're going to go do it anyway. And that's what happens. Like, it's nothing special. You can't even really spoil that plot. Like, it's on the back jacket. That's what we're doing.
But the characters and
the characters are so special.
And the setting,
and
like
the
Middle
setting
Earth,
is so foundational to what we now expect in fantasy books. It is astounding to me. Now, the other things that I've added are personal enjoyment, because I do think when I'm writing a review, especially for someone who hasn't read the book before, it's important to let them know what their reading experience is going to be like. Is it going to be a fun time? Is it going to be heavy? Is it going to make you think? Is it going to be a page turner? Is it going to be something you want to settle in and take your time with? Is it slower? Is it, a sing for your supper type of situation where you're going to have to invest 50% of the book where you don't really know what's going on, but then the payoff is going to be incredible. So I do talk about like the reading experience, which I call personal enjoyment. And then for me, as I read over the last 2.5 years pretty heavily, I've just learned the surest sign that a book is going to be 5 stars for me is if its themes are incredibly powerful and provoke intense emotional response. So I added emotional impact and I added themes. And there are books that have strong themes that don't hit me emotionally, but I do find them to be really engaging and important. And so sometimes a book will have a 5-star theme, like thematically, but it will only be, let's say, like a 3-star emotional impact, because it was like I was emotionally invested, but I wasn't like bawling or whatever. So they're not always correlated, but I have found that the books that make it on like my top 10 lists and like my favorite books of all time have 5-star theming and 5-star emotional impact.
Yeah, I think that I've noticed this in your ratings, that when something's lower, I'm like, I know where it was lacking. So this new category system I started using just this year when Maddie offered her spreadsheet that she created for herself to our Patreon. And we have a YouTube video that shows like all the different areas. I was a bit intimidated, and I think maybe which is okay. I think other people might feel the same way, but from my personal experience, I do not knowing what I like. So it has taught me to be a little bit more clear. I think I'm selfishly doing the spreadsheet to start really honing what it is I like in a book.
Yes.
Because I used to think it's a genre that I like. Oh, it's an author that I like. It's a special trope. But what I'm finding from the research is no, for me, it's really, really focused on plot.
That is such an important thing to learn about your own taste.
Super important on plot. So it could be a sci-fi, it could be a historic fiction, it could be fantasy, it could be even a rom-com. But if the plot is meandering, I'm not going to want to party. Like, I just won't do it.
That makes so much sense. And I think that is, I want readers to know their own taste. And I think back to your reservations, Kristen, about if you rate something highly and someone else didn't like it, or they pick it up at your recommendation and they end up not liking it, and then you feel bad. My hope in creating the spreadsheet and sharing my way of thinking critically about books and reviewing them, and then in sharing my reviews, my hope is that people learn which parts of stories really resonate with them. And then the review is helpful in the sense that even if I rated it 5 stars, they can see why and where, and they can know, okay, well, just because Maddie rated it 5 on all of these things doesn't mean it would be 5 for me for those reasons. So when I write a review, I do put what I rated each of those categories at the top of my review. But then in the paragraphs, I will say the character work was a 5-star for me because, and I'll go into that so that when you read that review, if you're like, oh, well, I care about characters being relatable. Mm-hmm. Okay, great. I will just tell you guys right now, I do not rate characters 5 stars because they are relatable. I rate characters highest when they are complex and when the author has somehow, usually it's very tactfully and with a lot of skill, found a way to portray a character that feels multi-layered and with complicated and often contradicting motivations, because I've just found as a human being, I often have contradicting motivations. I am not the same day today. I am not consistent. I want one thing one day really bad, and the next day I've completely forgotten about it. One thing is really important to me today, and then it's not important to me tomorrow.
Preach.
Something is what I wrap my entire identity in 1 year, and then the next year I grow and expand, and that thing isn't even really important to me anymore. And so as a human being who is evolving and changing and fickle, I really appreciate characters who are that way as well. It makes reading unpredictable. It engages and grips me because I don't feel like I ever quite have a handle on this person. Mm-hmm. I'm fascinated by that person. I want to get to know them more. I might not even like them. They may not even be a hero. Oftentimes they're an antagonist. Robin Hobb has the ability in her stories, without suffering with plot and pacing, she has this ability to write not 1, not 2, but a full cast of characters who are all like this. And it takes work. She has to invent these characters that feel very real, and she has to spend enough time with them in her mind to explore how they would be different day to day to day in all of these different situations as they relate with other complicated characters. And she has to somehow reveal all of this complication in her story without, stalling her plot. And I just think that is rare. It's something I don't see in a lot of other books. I'm reading as much as I possibly can, and I have yet to find other authors who are able to do that. So that's why I say she's a master of characters. She's the standard for me of what a 5-star character in a book is. And so when I read another book, maybe I like the character, or maybe the character is really relatable, or maybe the character has some kind of really interesting quirks, but I'm probably going to rate them a 3 or a 4, even if they're good, because, I have a standard now that Robin Hobb gave me of what a excellent character work is. Now, I will put that in a paragraph, and hopefully people will see, oh my gosh, she only rated, I'm trying to think of a character. Brandon Sanderson. She only rated the Way of Kings characters, let's say 3 stars. Like, what do you mean? Like, are they bad characters? No, they're not bad characters. They're solid characters, but Brandon Sanderson gets 5 stars from me because of setting and plot, not characters. His characters are okay, but once you get to know them, you kind of know them. They're not going to change that much. They're not that complicated. They're just kind of doing the thing in the plot.
He probably is like using all of his bullets
On setting.
Yes. And magic system building. He doesn't use his bullets on his character creating, perhaps.
Well, and his characters are there, I think, to support the themes that he's trying to write. And I really do like the themes that Brandon Sanderson puts in his books. And so I think he's using characters as like a canvas on which to offer thematic ideas. And that's fine. To his point, you only really have to be great at 2 of the 3. And
he took his own advice.
I think he's doing his best at characters. I just think, some people are better at other things than other people. And for him, he's very good at world building, as we know.
This is how I know I'm not going to read The Wheel of Time, is because I have been looking and like hearing Maddie's feedback, and based off of what is important to me, which is like, I would say emotional impact, enjoyment, personal enjoyment, and plot.
Oh, don't read The Wheel of Time, baby.
Nope.
No.
So what's fun is hopefully when people are following Chris and Mads, they get both of us. I think that I am like an earth sign and you are an...
I'm a water sign.
Yes. So I feel like some of that comes up in your desire. Do we need to start putting that in our reviews, what our signs are, so they know where we're coming from? Can you imagine?
Maybe that would be helpful.
You know what is different about you and I, though? We are different in this way. The like really popular book talk or bookstagram or booktube books that are coming around, like the ones that get real viral, I really want to read those because I actually am curious. Are they really good 5 stars in every category? Or is it just like that gateway drug thing that it has that gets people into reading? Because I feel so fondly about books that got me back into reading whenever I'd gone through like maybe like a slump season where I was not reading as much. Like those books really stick with you. But then if I were to go back and read them, they're not what I thought. So I have like this theory that some of these books that are just like everybody's like fire and they start book accounts because of them, or it's like they are obsessed with that author and it's like an auto buy. I wonder if it's like 5-star because I feel bad. Sometimes I go to read really trendy books and I'm like, did we literally not read the same thing? But I really want to. Those are the books that I really want to read and review. For instance, I really want to read A Fate Inked in Blood. I really want to read When the Moon Hatched.
Yeah, when. Mm-hmm.
And I want to read Elsie Silver's books. Now, these could all be great books. I have not read any of these. All I know is that people are feral for them. And I'm like skeptical. I'm like, but are they though?
This comes back to, let's say on my rating rubric, I think this comes down to, are these books high in personal enjoyment? And do the majority of people who start them finish them? And that is what creates a viral book. Now, another thing that creates a viral book is a huge marketing budget and it getting its own end cap or table at a bookstore.
Yes.
I think how much buzz is generated ahead of time, which again comes down to how big the marketing budget is for the book. So I do think we are creatures of habit who gravitate towards familiarity. And if we've seen a book many times and we're hearing a lot of buzz about a book, then we are more likely to pick it up. And if we get a general sense that a lot of people like this book, we are more inclined to like it. And so I think virality and popularity feeds on itself.
Oh, and I am like I'm not a fast fashion girly because you guys know I thrift like 100% of my clothing, but I do love a trend.
Yeah, of course you do.
I fucking love a trending sound, like a trending anything. And so I want to know, like, does it hold up? However, sometimes on the other side, I love when you and I feel like find something that isn't viral, but I'm like, it deserves it because it actually deserves it. It maybe doesn't have the budget. It maybe doesn't have the end cap at the bookstore, but we're like, it deserves its own shelf.
Yeah.
Like, it's so good. And bringing that up, I'm thinking of Thomas Weaver's Artificial Wisdom off the top of my head. That was so much fun. I feel like that book became a viral book and it deserved it so well. So I don't know, but I think Maddie has always felt very strongly about truth. And for her, it's her truth. She doesn't need it to be other people's truth, but she does like to know her truth. And that does take work and it takes a lot of intentionality. And so Maddie creating a spreadsheet and her having a section, guys, it's so cool where you can rate each of those categories she just described.
It will average them.
Yes.
So you'll put your rating into each of the 6 categories, and then it will take the average and round it to the nearest quarter star so that you know what your overall rating is.
But sometimes I think when people are following us, they're following us for you. Or maybe for me.
Yeah.
And
And then we
just so
don't have
funny.
the same.
They're like offended that Maddie rated something that I loved. Like, I rated the Gracier 5 stars. I was like, my enjoyment was so high. That plot was so fast and tight. Me and a YA, oh, we get along.
I rate a plot 5 stars if it is unpredictable.
Yeah.
If it is well paced, consistently paced. I don't necessarily need fast pacing. I don't even mind slow pacing, but I don't like it when it's fast, slow, fast, slow. Like, I need it to have a consistent tempo to it. And I will also rate a plot highly if it is like a multi-POV complex sing for your supper type of plot where there's a lot going on and you're not really sure how it all relates or why it's all relevant until the payoff. That can be super satisfying read for me. So whereas Kristen, when she's rating something on plot, it is, was it fast paced? Was I turning pages? Was I never bored? That's what Kristen is giving 5 stars. Now, and
unpredictability, because I feel like a good twist, nothing turns me on.
Like a twist you couldn't
like
predict.
A twist I said, woo,
so
loved it.
That's a situation where, okay, let's look at the Gracier. Kristen gave the Gracier 5 stars because the plot was great. The character was likable and different, right? Like, she wasn't like every other FMC.
Yeah, I would say personal enjoyment and emotional were actually the highest.
Okay, so we should talk about what you rate emotional impact. But so I rated that book 2 stars because I have read that character 50 times.
Yeah.
The setting was, the setting felt contrived to me. It felt unbelievable. It wasn't that it wasn't interesting or creative, but it felt unbelievable to me and oversimplified. Like, it was just in service to the plot.
Yeah.
The plot was very fast paced, but I found it to be very predictable and guessable for me.
Wait a second. I mean, I want to do spoiler free, but
yes,
later I need to find out if you had predicted one of the things in there.
I literally predicted why they went crazy. I predicted.
Okay. Wait.
Yep.
Okay. Well, but what about the man?
Yep. Totally predicted that.
What? He came out of nowhere. Okay. Here's in my defense. And this is I think actually one of the biggest reasons why some books rate really highly for us, but maybe they don't rate so highly for other people. I was coming out of a slump.
Yep.
And if you've been reading a lot of mid to lower books and one comes in and it might just be a little above average, but it's the first time that you're like, oh, I've got book momentum. Like, I love the feeling of like, cannot turn pages fast enough.
Yeah.
And so for me, enjoyment was so high because it had been very low for a while. And you could have come into the Gracier after reading something like fucking Sword of Kaigen or Robin Hobb and been like, what is this trash? Again, I'm not sure if I read the Gracier today.
We need to talk about that because I also think this might be one of the reasons you feel hesitant to leave ratings is that you are a person who changes.
Time and place, bruh.
Yeah. And you're just like, I rated, let's say the Gracier 5 stars or something else that you rated 5 stars. Then you're like, would I rate it that highly today? Here's the truth of that. No, you wouldn't. And neither would I. Like, it's okay. We change. And I think
should we put where we're at on our cycle when we review as well? Like, people need to know, like, Kristen rated this 2 stars because it was 2 days before her period and she was about to fucking go crazy.
Or I was, coming out of a reading slump. I mean, you can do that. But at some point, Your rating isn't a justification for your worth, Kristen. You're not justifying anything.
Maddie, you're so sweet.
You don't have to justify anything. All you have to say is, when I read this book, this should just be a given. This should just be a given. Your rating is not an objective truth. It's for me as a fickle human being who is cyclical, who has her own astrological alignments and her own shit going on in life. I read this book, and when I thought critically about it in terms of character setting, plot, themes, emotional impact, and personal enjoyment, this is what it did for me. And here's a little bit about each of those things. And guess what? Readers and book buyers have to make their own minds up and take their own personal responsibility for what they choose to buy and read. It is not book reviewers' responsibility what kind of experience another reader has with the same book. And so you just need to let yourself off the hook of that. And to your point, there's a lot of reasons to review books and think critically about you read beyond helping other people. I truly believe I would be writing reviews the exact same way I write them now, whether we had a platform or not, or whether I was number 20 reviewer on Goodreads or not, whether anyone ever read my reviews.
Oh, I know this for a fact because
I would write them.
Like every movie you and Dad ever watched, like the movie's over, I'm like, that was a good time. All right, I'm ready to go to bed. I start cleaning up snacks, and her and Dad are like, let's deep dive this shit. And they start like analyzing every part of it and what didn't work and what worked. And I'm like,
this is just part of my personality. I like to think critically about what I am consuming.
Right. So this makes sense to me. And what is even better, even though I'm usually tired when movies are done, so I'm not like always in the mood, I think about things more afterwards, and I sit with things longer because of you guys' conversations. So hopefully, if people start writing reviews and thinking more critically about their books, maybe it's like sitting with the book longer. Maybe it's like letting the enjoyment trickle even longer after the last page.
Yes.
Like so much of your annotating that you like to do, where you're highlighting and underlining, you know, using your tabs. I think so much of that is like holding it for notes later. So you think about it throughout, but then afterwards you continue to kind of feel what that book is making you feel. I bet authors love that. Like they want you to really give a shit about what they wrote. They spend how many months
how much
writing
of them
these
is
books?
Sticky notes and storyboarding, and I picture them doing like what the private detectives do, or the investigators, like with the connecting the strings and mapping it all out. And it's like, we just get to consume it in its finished form, but it's like there is a satisfaction I get from dissecting it afterwards and pulling it apart to its separate parts and being like, what of this worked and what didn't, and worked for me and for what reasons. And to your point, Kristen, earlier, I think that it does help you hone your taste and pick new things better. I think it helps me get through like beginner I call it the beginner slump, I guess. But it's like, you know, when you pick up a new book and the first 30 to 50 pages, or sometimes for me, even like the first 200 pages, it's like you're still building momentum in that story.
Yeah.
I think knowing what I'm reading for and looking forward to the end when I can look at all of these parts and pieces, it really gets me through the beginning of books.
Yeah.
Because it's just like
The beginning can be difficult. It
but
can be
it's
hard.
like I know what I'm reading for. So I'm curious for you, Kristen, when you think about the themes of a book, because you said those are pretty important to you too. Like, do you feel like you always get the theme right away while you're reading, or is it in reflection? Because to me, it is in reflection. That's why I very first started doing the like critical thinking exercise after reading, because it's like, I think I'm reading focused on the plot while I'm reading it. Like, I just want to make sure I like understood what happened. But then afterwards, I want to be like, why did that happen? What were the underlying messages? What were the themes of this story?
So actually, I don't read for themes at all.
Oh,
I know. Like I've noticed this about us, that themes are very high and like your preferred peak reading. But I do like a good theme and I can appreciate it. But I think themes hit me emotionally. So I actually see themes translated in my rating when you look at the emotional. So for instance, when I read Blood Over Brighthaven, which was my favorite book of 2024, I rated that very highly because my enjoyment was high. I liked the characters and it was really twisty and there was like a lot of like creative unpredictability. But emotionally, I just loved some of the emotions that the main character felt and her like friend that she makes that's helping her in the book. And now I look back, I'm like, oh, it's because of the themes of this book. The themes are the emotions that she's feeling. They are very correlated, but I feel them emotionally. It's very hard for me to be like, what was the theme of what I was feeling? Because it wasn't just sexism, but I have felt like an underdog and like I have to earn my place in a world where maybe I don't belong, but I want to belong.
And I totally think this comes down to your astrological placements, because
Virgo.
Your big three are earth, water, and fire.
There's no air in this bitch.
Right. And my rising is a Libra. Yeah. So I am very cerebral about it. But
yes.
But okay, so back to, I mean, I love that you brought up Blood Over Brighthaven as an example. I really appreciated the nuance of the themes in that book, because people will hear that I read for themes and they'll recommend certain books to me, and I want to be like, well, I don't know if that's going to hit as hard for me as it hit for you.
Because you like it subtle.
I do not like themes that are oversimplified, preachy, and bang you over the head multiple times and are super obvious and glaring and bumper stickery. That is not my vibe. I definitely like to hunt for themes and to recognize that the themes are just inherent in the truth and authenticity of the action and the characters. I think that thematic truth can't help but be present, intentionally or unintentionally, by the author if the story is true. If it's so grounded in realness, then it can't help but be true. And I think that's one of the reasons Blood Over Brighthaven, like you're saying, hits so emotionally, because while the book is absolutely centered on themes of systemic oppression, some of that is very obvious, but I think that the deeper themes of Blood Over Brighthaven have a lot to do with personal responsibility and personal villainy and the shadows in all of us.
I think that's what I was
less obvious.
Yes. I think that like the emotion that I felt reading it was, this girl thinks that she is good and she is doing things right, which I would say is me.
And that she's the victim.
And that you're the victim and you have to overcome things. And what she finds in the story is there are people who are way more victimized than her. And also she is putting herself in the victim bracket space. She is slotting herself there. And if she could empower herself to see her flaws that she is causing, that she is not perfect and all good and has it all figured out, very relatable for me to notice, so if I am not actually the true victim, I am just putting that label on myself, and that, yes, I am flawed, but I do deserve a space here when I step into the biggest version of me that is empowered and clear and humble enough that when I'm wrong, I'm going to backtrack. Look at what happens. By the end of the book, I was like, that's what happens when people take responsibility. They take off their their victim robes, and they are clear about their imperfections, but also where they can step up. It's like, I don't know.
I also think that book thematically deals a lot with that sometimes there is no right answer, which feels so true to life. And I think,
so defeating too. Sometimes it can be really bog you down.
Which that goes into the emotional impact of the story, because I think we can all relate to that feeling of futility. But what's interesting is that ML Wong looks at the complication of being involved in the oppressive system and what that moral dilemma that produces, because it's interesting to realize that you can feel like the system you're operating in is super corrupt, be that in your job or in a education system or, in the way that your society community is using energy or whatever. You can look at your buying choices, your eating choices, the food industry, pick your poison.
Oh my God, yeah.
You can look at any of that and be like, oh my God, it's so corrupt. Like, I need to beat it. I need to fix it. And I think it's an interesting moral quandary to be like, how complicit are you when you are fighting the thing that you hate by participating in it? And it's like, what kind of power would there be in just not participating and not necessarily fighting it or being an activist in it or trying to bring it down or tear it down. I mean, obviously, sometimes that is the solution. This is why I love story. Sometimes that is the choice that we make, and you can have profound impact by doing that. And then sometimes it's subtler and it's sneakier, and sometimes it's about breaking it down brick by brick, little by little from within. Sometimes it's just about not participating in it. Sometimes it's literally just about giving none of your energy to the system that is corruptive. So, and sometimes it's about taking what you've won. You know, there's other characters that you can observe that story through besides the main character. And it's like, sometimes it's about taking what you've won. Sometimes it's just about running away. And sometimes that's the answer. It's just to escape. Sometimes escaping is victory. So I love a complicated story like that, where there's lots of different ways to look at what is big and complicated and corrupt, and how we want to take whatever personal agency we have to deal with it. And to go back to the Grace Year, Kristen, I do think that the Grace Year's strength is its thematic strength. And I think people think that the theme of the Grace Year is like feminism.
Which is so weird, because I didn't get that. Like, it felt so obvious that I just was like,
that was the obvious theme. But I thought that the like subtler themes in it were that, because the main character is kind of insufferable in this way, that the main theme is that we are stronger together. And that if you want to be a true feminist, you should try to be a girl's girl. You should just stop hating and competing with other women.
Damn. Here's the thing about ratings. So this is like kind of where I want to end this today, because I feel like you guys got even more than themes. You're welcome for that Blood Over Brighthaven review right there.
Oh.
When I go to review things from here on out, I think the biggest hurdle that me and maybe some of our listeners have to overcome is realizing that you are just a ripple in a giant pond, especially when it comes to these big books that have many, many reviews.
Totally.
Okay. So don't take it too seriously. But also, if you're Maddie and you do take reviewing very seriously, it is helpful. And it is actually probably not just helpful to readers, but also to authors. So it's a gift that we can give them as a thank you, especially when you really enjoy something. And I know I look at Goodreads reviews and average ratings before I add a book to my TBR. So there's also some personal responsibility to take there, that maybe we should take the time and really figure out, why are we rating things? Do we just rate things off of how they made us feel? So are you just doing it on personal enjoyment? Or are you going to be like Maddie? I aspire to be like Maddie, and really think about, what is it that makes this enjoyment so high? How can I be more helpful? I'm going to overcome this, guys. I know I can.
I think the biggest thing I want to leave everybody with is you don't have to be nice. You just have to be honest. And I think that there's always a classy and constructive way to be honest in your reviews. And I've heard people throw around, reviews are for readers, not for authors. And I think what that statement is trying to connotate is that, you don't need to pad your rating for the author to be nice to them about their work. And I would say you don't need to pad your rating for anyone. There's always, if you finished the book, there's always something about the book probably that kept you reading. Even if you were hate reading it, it's like, well, you were probably reading it because it's popular and you just hated it, but you needed to find out why it was popular. Okay, so in your rating, and your review, you can say, this is such a popular book. I wonder if this, when you think critically about it, you can be like, I wonder if this is why. And this is my opinion about that. And these are the things that did not work for me and the type of reader I am. And that is a kindness to the world. Your constructive honesty is always a kindness to yourself and a kindness to the world. So I don't think it's really about being nice or, putting on your defensive armor and being like, it's for readers, not for authors. Like, okay.
I've never heard that before. What a funky thing to say.
It's for you. It's for the sake of, I think all art is worth thinking critically about and engaging with. And if it teaches you something about yourself or it creates an honest conversation with other human beings, then it's valuable. And so don't worry about pleasing other people. Just focus on being constructive and being honest. And the more clear and honest you can be with yourself, the better you're making the world. I truly believe that.
I love that so much. Maddie, thank you so much for being on our show.
I'm so happy to be here. Maybe I should come back for the next episode.
Thank you for being on our show. If you guys enjoy our conversations, like, subscribe, leave a comment, whatever you can do with wherever you're watching it.
We definitely appreciate ratings on listening platforms.
We love honest reviews.
We do. We appreciate constructive, honest reviews and feedback. It's very, very satisfying and helpful to us.
Oh, I love it. Well, have a great day, guys, and happy reading.
Happy reviewing. Bye.
And I bet we feel good together. If I could just get over myself and give me a chance.